Hello and welcome to this special episode of Ways to Change Your Workplace with myself, Prina Shah. And I'm very, very, very excited to introduce to you today my friend, Yoke van Dam, all the way from South Africa. Hello, Yoke. How are you?
I'm very well, and it's so nice to meet across time zones. Prina, thank you
I
so much
know.
for making this happen.
We're finally doing it. So we have been talking about doing a podcast together forever. And I met Yoka through our mutual friend Leanne, who is also on my podcast a couple of times. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and check it out. But today, Yoka, I'm speaking with you. May I introduce you? I've got a bit of a spiel that I'm going to shout out to our audience. So my friend Yoka van Dam, all the way from South Africa, has been called the Kintsugi Queen because of her ability to join, repair, and transform teams into something quite wonderful. And for people who don't know what Kintsugi is the Japanese art form of creating something broken into something whole by putting gold leaf and glue on it. So it's beautifying something that was already broken. It's amazing. So Yoko has been called the Kintsugi Queen. Her work is like Kintsugi, and her tried and tested high performance processes have seen even the most underperforming and fractured teams join together and become stronger and more remarkable. She works with leaders who want to effectively articulate and communicate their vision so that their teams buy into it and are prepared to follow them to hell and back to make sure that this vision is achieved. If Yoko is not advising, speaking, or coaching in South Africa, or by the way, around the globe now, congratulations. You can also find her doing work all over the world. She speaks all over the world. She also hikes up mountains. She loves a glass of wine with her husband, Etienne. Yoko, welcome.
Thank you so much, Prina. It's been wonderful being on a journey with you all of these years. I think we've known each other for 3 years. Didn't
I
we
think
meet
so.
in 2020 or was it before that? I'm not even sure.
Possibly.
One
It's
of
been a
those.
while. Exactly. And
Awesome.
Yoko, today I really want to talk to you about something that you and I are really passionate about, and it's the work, one piece of work that you and I both do, and it's how to heal a fractured team. So, using your Kintsugi Queen analogy, I want to talk to you about how to heal a fractured team. And Yoko, to begin with, can you tell us, in your own words, what you do and why you do it?
So I help leaders and teams really create meaningful workspaces. So I realized that I needed to reframe, even though I'm working with the fractured or toxic teams, it's actually about helping people uncover their purpose so that they can actually find meaning in their work and
Yes.
ultimately helping the leaders and teams build confidence, find their flow, develop a growth mindset, and really influence. So those are the areas, and it's really speaking, training, coaching, and a wide variety of topics. So a lot of EQ, leadership development, problem solving, negotiation skills, all of those nice things. But why I do it, Prina, that's more. I was I was working I was working in a lot of corporate environments, and I think you also saw it there, where I would be training teams and I would get frustrated because the company would say, this is our culture and these are our core values, and no one were held accountable to it. And the managers were the worst at it. And I wasn't even in a management role there. I was in the role of training national sales teams, but then all of the toxicity came up, and then they would say to me, "Oh, this department's fighting with this department. So sales hates corporate governance, hates accounts." And they were all working in silos and not like really finding each other. And my mission really became in that business to say, can you create leaders without titles? Can you actually create a positive ripple effect where you can change people from the inside out? So when I started out Y Connect in 2017, my tagline was changing behavior because I wanted to bring that ripple effect changing behavior. But then when I analyzed it and went much deeper and really getting through the years, getting into, dealing with those fractured teams and what I really want, I actually realized when you're working at a culture at a purpose level, you're actually operating much higher behavior. There's this model called, I don't know if you've worked with logical levels of change in NLP. So at the bottom, you've got environment, and then just above it, you have behavior, what people do. And then above it is values and beliefs and skills and capabilities. Then you have identity, and then you have purpose. The higher up the ladder you work with people, it affects everything below it. So I realized that by getting people to really buy into the values, the identity, and the purpose of the business, that would affect everything they do. So if you're only working on a behavior level and or on a skills level, you're actually very low on the paradigm. So we're always building skills,
Yeah.
but ultimately we want to create meaning and purpose so that ultimately in business, you want organizations where there's staff retention. And I know you're going to be interviewing Alan Weiss, and I remember him once saying most business owners or CEOs, they care about staff attrition. It costs them a lot of money to retrain people.
Yeah.
It costs them a lot of money to recruit people. It costs them a lot of money to get rid of people
Hmm.
that aren't aligned to the culture. So if you can actually help people see what their purpose is and their purpose in the business,
Yep.
then they will want to stay, and you will actually get them to perform on an amazing level because they feel that there's deep meaning in the work that they do. So I know that's like a, a whole mouthful, but ultimately I think what summarizes it for me is there's a quote from Mother Teresa who said, I alone can't change the world, but I can cast a stone across a bed of water and watch it create many ripples. So
Oh,
for me, it's like, what is the ripple effect?
yeah,
Are
okay.
you leaving a nuclear power zone explosion? I always say, is it like Chernobyl, where 35 years later there's still radiation, people have died? After you've left a business, do you leave it better than how you found it? What is the legacy like? And that's
Yes.
often, I think, where I think you also work with a lot of leaders, right? Because if you can create the ripple effect with leaders, the
Yes.
impact is massive,
Huge.
massive. Even
Yes.
coaching one leader, I've noticed how an entire department have shifted.
Yeah.
Coaching one leader, like it's insane.
Yoka, I've got so much to say here. So that's why I love you. So I love talking. Um, the impact is massive, not only on the individual, but on their team and the wider organization. Yoka, I take it further because a happy employee goes home happy. That family is happy, and then the little community is happy. Society is happy, the world is happy. So yes, I'm talking about happiness from a perspective of doing good with the little one piece of thing that you do in relation to the workplace, which is why I'm all about finding ways to change your workplace, because there's more to life than work as well. Let's be honest, it has to be a good place. And I can clearly see that you have a clear values alignment in what you do for the people that you serve.
Definitely. I want to just share a quick story. I interviewed this
Wow.
leader. She's from South Africa. Her name is Margaret Hirsch, and her and her husband many years ago started the Hirsch home stores. And last year, July, something hectic happened in South Africa. It was there were these riots in KwaZulu-Natal, and one of their big major franchise stores was ransacked. And during that time, I was actually interviewing a lot of leaders, asking them what was the impact of COVID on their leaders and teams and all of that. And here she was in Belito at the sea at that store with a broom cleaning up the store after people had like broken the windows, stealing the washing machines, whatever. And I said to her, Margaret, don't you want to, move our interview? And she said, no, let's just do it. And I spoke to her about what happened there and how she's dealing with it and all of that. And she said what they've realized is her and her husband and their bigger family, they're fine. They don't need the income from that store, but that ripple effect, the amount of breadwinners and
Yes.
surrounding communities
Oh,
that would get impacted, they realized that they had to very, very quickly get the store off the ground. They bought all the bricks they could, all the glass. I think within 3 days, the store was open and functioning again because they cared about the wider communities and the breadwinners and what it would do to people if they didn't have jobs. And I was like, that is leadership.
that
When it's not about your money, it's like you say,
a
going
bigger.
home to the families and the wider communities that gets touched by those people. Sure.
Beautiful. Amazing. Amazing. And I love your 2016 change line about changing behaviors. I was thinking my 2016 tagline was for those who question the natural order of things. So see, we are aligned. We are aligned, Yoka.
Very much so.
So, Yoka, today's conversation is going to be about how to heal fractured teams. But before we even delve into how to, can I ask you, what are some of the common signs or indicators that a team is toxic? And how can these be identified, first off?
So some of the signs could be if people have these high walls,
Yep,
so they are really unwilling to speak up.
yep,
Where there's a lack of vulnerability, they're also fearful to speak up.
yep,
Also, a lack of commitment. So lots of meetings, no buy-in.
yep,
No clear action plan, no deadlines, no accountability. So you feel like you're having meetings, 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 and nothing happens. And no one is holding anyone accountable to it. But also, I'm a very big fan of Patrick Lencioni's work.
yep,
And he says accountability should not just be from the manager or the leader. There should also be group accountability.
yep,
So I it was hilarious. I was in Toastmasters for more than 10 years, and I was in this one club in Johannesburg. I was in so many clubs, but this club had a culture of excellence. And no one would ever cancel their speech because you had that group accountability or group peer pressure of
uh-huh,
you better do your best and you better be prepared and you better like respect everyone else's time. And because there was that culture of excellence and that peer pressure, the deliveries was so much better and people actually like elevated themselves so much more than other places where it was just the vice president of education that had to hold people accountable to, you committed to doing a speech, so you better do it.
yep,
Here it was, everyone expected it, and that's just how it went.
yep,
So I think with toxic teams, it's when the cat leaves the mouse out to play. So when the manager's not there, people go crazy. So they don't actually go towards the goal. So very often they have a victim mindset. They are gossiping in the corridors. So people are not very straightforward with each other.
yep,
So instead of saying to you, Prina, I'm comfortable with that, I'll go and gossip behind your back and say, oh, that was so terrible when she said this and this. And, so people are insulting each other, they criticize each other. So instead of addressing behaviors, they criticize each other. So those are just some
yeah.
of the things.
And,
So I do.
there's a
Mm,
lot there, Yoka. And I know our audience would have, and we have experienced wonderful teams ourselves when we worked in corporate land and, not so great teams as well. Um, and going back to what you said about Lencioni and the work that you tap into there as well, he talks highly about trust. And Yoka, and if
yes.
you and I are in a team and we don't trust each other, even if you're working on A and I'm working on B, if there's that lack of trust between us, we are doomed.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So there's silos, there's a lack of trust, there's so much, just dysfunctional teams on many, many levels, lack of accountability and everything that you mentioned. Um, so Yoka, you've had a phone call. I am a stressed out leader and I need your help. So these are the kind of phone calls you get and I get, let's say, your team is at its worst stage, or let's say you've inherited a legacy team, you know, you're brand new into this organization and there's just something not quite right, and you need to focus on team health. That's what I call it. And I know Lencioni is very, very focused on team health as a concept as well.
That's lovely, yeah.
I love that. If someone called you, I'm gonna call you. You okay? I'm brand new in this team. There's something quite wrong with it. Help me. I need you. What would you do? What can you do? What kind of things can you support me with?
So there's no magic wand. I was saying it to you earlier off the
Yep.
call, but what you can start doing, and what I've often found, the moment an outside facilitator comes in, people sometimes feel much more comfortable in
Yeah.
being led in a process. I don't know if you've seen this, where they won't listen to their own manager, but if an outside person makes suggestions, they're much more open to it.
Yep.
So what I've seen is we focus on a lot of the five dysfunctions of a team, and we do kind of like activities and games to get them to realize where are they aligning, where are they not trusting each other, where is there a lack of communication, all of those things. But what often happens is people don't know each other. So through
Yes.
those interventions, and I think that's something you and Leanne also spoke about, the value of facilitation often lies in the connections people make in
Yes.
that room, in that space. But then also they have the aha moments. And I saw something interesting happening with one of the groups that I was doing work with. And then I went on this whole coaching journey individually with the people. So we kind of like laid the foundations of um, five dysfunctions of a team, getting into clear communication, rebuilding that trust, all of that. And what I saw is when you look at the five dysfunctions, people often sit with that lack of trust, and they're fearful to speak up. So
Yes.
they're fearing conflict. So they almost like walking on eggshells, and they don't actually want to say what's up. So on the second day with this group, it was very interesting, Brina. Um, the gloves came off. They literally started fighting with each other in the room,
Oh,
and I was kind of like shocked. The one lady literally burst out in tears, went to the bathroom, and then I realized for the first time they actually honestly speaking to each other. It's actually good. They actually need to get it out. Now they just need to apply the relevant EQ to know how to do it and
yes.
how to handle it. That, what is the positive intention? How can you do it? What is your tone of voice? So for me, it was quite hectic. So we, after that, then did an intervention before we went into the coaching. So I'm
Yes.
a very big fan of the Euros journey, and I was using
Yes.
the Euros journey as a process to to kind of like show the team, and I was explaining it to them from the perspective of the Lion King. If you look at the different acts of the Euros journey, at the first act, it's all about boundaries, where Simba's father says to him, "Don't go to the elephant graveyard." What does he do? He goes to the elephant graveyard, nearly dies, sees the hyenas, almost like killing him, and seeing who are the villains, who are the friends, all of that, learning that deep lesson. And
Yes.
then actually going into that next one where because he's done something bad, something else happens. And that's where he actually goes, and where it's the run of the wildebeest, and his father dies trying to rescue him. So I explained the different stories, and I said to them, where are you in your team, in your story? Are you at the elephant graveyard? Oh
Oh,
yeah, that place where the mentors died? Are where are you? Are you only in the first act? Are you going to choose to exit this team now and
yes.
not go through the journey where you're actually returning like Simba eventually did, with the lessons and the learning, where he had to go back and fight the hyenas and really become the lion that he was meant to be, to become the king? I was like, where are you as a team? And they all said, Mufasa has died. But we
Oh,
don't want to exit the story, because the idea with that session was to say that your company actually wants to invest in you. They want to help you. You've now done this work, but it's actually going to require you to do much deeper work on your own. and they want you to go on a coaching journey. You can come and speak to me afterwards and we will sign you up. So they originally thought that two people were going to sign up. So they were like a team of 8. 6 of them then came to me and said they want to go on this coaching journey. They had to
Mm,
go back to the CEO and renegotiate budget.
mm,
And then they went on this journey. It was like a 3 to 4 month coaching journey. And
mm.
everyone were dealing with different things. So they were like pharmacists, there was a medical doctor, they're like in the medical industry, and some were dealing with issues on the public speaking side, some were dealing with conflicts.
Yeah,
But what I saw is they were dealing with real world things, and then we would apply the foundational work that we'd done. So I found, Prina, for me, there's no magic wand, but
no,
when you can start laying the foundation, getting people to notice like the purpose, the culture, the changes they want to make,
yeah,
and then you actually go and you do coaching, whether it's group or individual coaching, so that the behavior change can actually take place.
yes,
That has really worked wonders. And afterwards, one of the managers, so a few months later, I said to her, so how has it been? Because I gave them feedback from the feedback forms and what I'd noticed. Every month I would give them feedback, which is high level because it
mm,
was all confidential, what
mm,
was being discussed. And they said they could not recognize the people because they decided to
yeah.
do something
And
about it.
And
Because,
that's the
yeah,
thing. It's not an overnight fix. It's not a quick fix. There is no magic wand for it because every team has different quirks and different people. That is the wonder of humanity. Yeah. I love the fact that you talk about it is important to have an outside party, such as an external facilitator or a third person of some sort, because of that psychological safety being broken within a team. Like, hello, it's toxic already. There's issues. So if you try and work on it internally yourself, good luck. It's not going to work as well as if you have an external third party. When I work on these kind of projects, similar to yourself, Yoka, it's all about having adult conversations and setting the scene from the get-go,
exactly.
right? I love
Yeah,
the fact that you talked about people don't know each other often, and it's that connection aspect that's really missing. I use an analogy, or I use an example actually of my own experience. So when people don't know each other in a team and you're working with each other, like the whole year or whatever, however long you're in this job, and if we don't know each other, I use an analogy of my own experience where Happy Prina, when I was working in corporate days, would have this wonderful idea and I'd write my business case and I'd take it to my manager and he'd throw it back at me and say, well, where are the
uh,
stats? And where is this? And where is that?
uh,
I ended up resenting him like you would not believe, Yoka. So there was conflict, there was tension, internal tension within me because I felt like I was constantly being rejected by him. Then I finally recommended that we do our own team development session to try and understand each other's work styles. And you can do DISC, you can do print, you can do all sorts of psychometric tests, whatever you want to.
exactly. Yeah,
But using that as a tool to say, hey, this is me, this is how I communicate, this is how I think, this is how I work, this is how I listen, this is how I talk, all of that, him and everybody else saying that, I dropped my resentment, Yoka. So it really reminded me of that because all I learned, this is a data-driven person who holds the budget and who has to be accountable at the end of the day to the big boss, the chief financial officer. That's all it was about. Simple as that. So that was really interesting, I thought. And then in relation to when we're working on culture change, especially with toxic teams, the other thing I really focus on as well is, yes, there's the internal aspect, Yoka, but there's often the external aspect because let's be honest, when it's a shitty team, everybody in the organization knows about it. So I think the other healthy aspect eventually down the line to work on is your team brand and what you stand for, what you stand against, what your perception is, what you really see or think, and hearing from your customers often as well. And I love the fact that you explained, so you did that one session and then people came on to you as coachees. Now, the work that we do, and as you clearly stated, it's not a, hey, Yoko will come in and our team will be wonderful, hunky-dory after you've walked out of that door. No way, that ain't going to happen. Leanne in her podcast mentioned a line by Michael Bungay Stainer, who talks about taking people out of their workplace into wonderful development programs. So he uses the analogy of taking a goldfish out of the dirty water and putting it into the clean water of this training or development, whatever it is. And then let's go and pull that goldfish out and put it back into the murky water. No, no way. It's a long-term thing if you want sustainable, positive culture change at that team level, right? Brilliant, Yoko. You've given so much detail already. Um,
I just want to add something to what you were
Please.
saying, Prina. So you were saying, I loved what you were saying about the team brand. What do we stand for? What do we stand against?
Yeah.
Hearing from the customers. So the voice of the customers. So that's really like almost your team culture work and team purpose work that you're doing. I love that. So
Yeah.
that the rest of the company doesn't see you as the way that they've always seen you. And I think where a lot of this sometimes collapses, and I was actually recently shocked with a team that I did work with. There
Mm-hmm.
was someone that had zero growth mindset, zero growth mindset. And that's where, if the person just says, I haven't learned anything, I'm not willing to take anything from this, but they're also not willing to learn from their manager, be open to feedback. They're very much stuck. And I had to give feedback to the HR department to say, please can you reallocate the coaching sessions to someone else because I don't want to work with her.
No.
She's unwilling to do the work. And the feedback came back that they even try to coach her. And then you actually have to ask yourself, do you want to work with someone like that? Or I said to her, as HR, you need to have a conversation, and the manager needs to have a conversation to say, it's not okay to treat external parties like this and this. That's where your values accountability has to come in.
And you're okay. So let's continue this conversation then. So you're okay. This person is clearly disengaged, disillusioned, disenfranchised, whatever's happening beneath that iceberg, that we love talking about. We don't know what's happening beneath there. But then, in relation to that, imagine that one person and the toxic effect that they're having on that whole team. But the really important thing for that one person, which we often forget when we're in a shitty team situation and we're in the depths of the worst situation, we ourselves can forget that there is a way out. You can quit, you can go and find another job.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I think,
She
that's
also
a
doesn't have to stay there, but I think the problem with her is she's happy to just stay the way she is, to kind of like, just cruise until
and
she's retired. But the
yeah,
problem is with that, Alan Voss saying again is, while you were sleeping, the world has changed. If
yes,
you're not actually continuously improving and changing, you're actually going to allow your company to go backwards.
yep,
So it's like you cannot have that attitude. And that's where, on the leadership side, where there's a lack of accountability, I
yeah,
believe.
100%. Yoko. Um, let's talk at that executive level. I'm freestyling even more with you now. So we're talking about toxic teams or broken or fractured teams. A lot of them are often at the highest level, at the executive level, which then has such an awful impact on the rest of the organization. That flow on effect that you talked about. Um, what can be done in relation to executive teams? Because let's say, Yoka, I know it all. What the hell are you, young person, going to teach me?
So, what can be done is things like 360-degree feedback to also get input from other departments, lower levels, how are they being seen, and then having coaching interventions there.
Mm-hmm.
There was a very funny talk that Patrick Lencioni did with a CEO who he gave, or like a top end director who he helped with 360-degree feedback. And then he had to have a meeting with his department or team to like discuss what feedback was given, but he took no accountability. And he was just saying, okay, so I've seen you guys say that I'm very critical. do you think I'm critical? And then everyone would say, no, 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 not at all. And then he literally said, he just was squeaking his chair and he said, excuse me, you were the people that answered the survey, but there was no psychological safety
Mm-mm.
to actually to be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
So in that regard, I think maybe doing that and then first having individual coaching with
Yeah.
that individual to actually develop the growth mindset, because
Yeah.
very often I work with executives who are very perfectionist focused, and when they think that they are perfect, or like, what's bad about it is they don't like to hear negative feedback. They don't
No.
have the growth mindset to be open to it. So it's about, I think, like sandwiching it, finding ways of helping them see that feedback, noticing what they can do about it,
Yeah.
maybe delving deeper into specific chunk sizes.
Yeah.
Because when you as an individual, hear too much negative things, we also
Yeah.
shut down.
And
So I think like for
yeah.
that benefit of that person, it needs to like there needs to be a process and a plan to be like, also what are the strengths? Not
Yeah.
just focusing on, strengths-based
Yeah.
focus.
Yeah.
What are you really good at, but what do you need to be aware of? What are the
Yeah.
blind spots?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I have a podcast. I'll link to it in the show notes where I've
Mm.
outlined what I do with executive teams. Yoka, so one of the things you talk beautifully about this, you can't just jump straight into here's a 360 and you tell me, is this me? Is this not? Because you haven't created that safety. You haven't created the trust. There's clearly something lacking. And at that level as well, you're at the height of your career, you don't want to admit to having fucked up either, because that could be career suicide. And it need not necessarily be completely like messing things up, but even, accepting there's a little part of you that needs development. It's fragile to my ego, my professional brand. So that's a really difficult thing. So when I work with executive teams to help them come together, we talk about the three concepts. We talk about me as an individual, we as a team, and then us at the organizational level. So that's how I have my conversation. So at that me
Mm.
level, what I start off with to create that psychological safety, especially, is to start off with like I said earlier, even with executive teams, you can start off with, I wouldn't go 360. It depends on the maturity level and whether they can take it. That's a big thing. I would start off with some kind of psychometric test of sorts so that, hey,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is
Even
my style.
communication styles,
Yeah,
strengths-based tests. Yes.
exactly. So that, I can hide behind a tool, so to speak. It's safe.
Yes.
This is a
Yes.
report that has, scientifically confirmed blah, blah, blah about me. So I have more validity to talk about me as an individual. So that's that me level. And then we get to the we level. I talk about, we've evolved trust and relationships by now with me as well as with each other. Um, so at that level, I get to, so me level we've done, and then the we as a team. I talk about, all right, it's time to have real adult conversations now. And I want you to bring in something that's really poignant to you as a human being. So something that means something to you, that has a story that talks to who Yoka is, who Prina is. And people will bring in random things, like I don't know, let's say my favorite pen or whatever, and there'll be a story behind that. Or, this stress ball of a teddy bear that I have near my desk because I'm always stressed or whatever. So then we get we get to understand each other a little bit more. And then with that session, the other thing I highly recommend, and I'll definitely link to that podcast where I outline the whole session that I run, is Yoka, I ask every single person beforehand to consider, in relation to that whole executive team, two things that you are doing wonderfully that you are really helping our team with, and two things that you need to stop doing that is holding our team back. And this is the no bullshit conversation now. And we take emotions off. It has to be factual and it has to be respectful still. And the other thing, as a facilitator, we have a lot of control and power, which is wonderful. So the intention of the feedback is we as a team, but then with that us concept of the whole organization. And
That's
you know,
amazing.
because often at that executive level, Yoka, sometimes the egos get really fucking big and it's all about me. No, it's not. And that's the bubble that we need to burst. But that's not in one session. It takes time because it takes trust. And, you know, as facilitators, I know what you do and I've seen the way you do it. You really have to gauge, you really have to see who's in, who's not. It's quite the fine art, isn't it, to read people in that manner. And you can't just fix a team overnight in that respect.
And that's where when they say two things that they need to stop doing,
Mm.
that can be a behavior or it's an action. It's not criticizing the person.
No,
So should they get into criticizing each other, then it's about you as facilitator reframing that.
yeah.
Okay, you're
Oh,
saying that. What can they do about it? Because
exactly.
what we tend to do is we tend to just criticize
Yeah.
and criticize people, but then we don't tell them how they can fix it or what they can do about it. It's
Yes.
like, what
Actually,
is the
yes.
solution? Don't just make this person
Yes.
feel bad.
Yes.
How can they change it? So
Yes.
even in my own marriage, I do
Okay.
that with my husband if we fight I
Love it.
ask and I say sorry and I say, okay,
Healthy.
but how can I fix this? What can
Yeah.
I do about it? Tell me what can I do better?
Right.
And then there's actions. It's not just, oh, you've heard me. It's like, it wasn't my intention, but
Yeah.
how do we go beyond this and how do we prevent this
Yes.
in the future?
With a solution that is suitable for me, because my style is really different to yours and that other person, another person. So let's say that, and there has been some personal stuff that has been mentioned in some of these sessions, Yoka. So the personal stuff could be, you always talk over me. I feel that's because I'm a woman and you don't respect me. It's like,
Sure.
whoa, that's loaded, yeah. So then me as a facilitator, okay, so you feel that you're not heard or your voice is not represented in decision making. Is that what it is? Yes, no, whatever. Therefore, what do you need? And it's talking about that need because when there's conflict, or anytime there's conflict or toxicity of any sort, it's because whatever parties, however many people are involved, needs have not been met. So we need to articulate those needs which haven't been met. But as humans, surface level is often anger and resentment.
Yeah.
And then beneath it is, oh,
Need to
actually,
go deeper.
yeah.
Yeah. And what often happens, I think, when you're actually asking them those questions, is it can trigger their fight and flight response.
Mm-hmm.
So the person possibly just switches off. So the fact that you are facilitating kind of the conversation, summarizing,
Mm.
mirroring, reframing, um, does it get captured somewhere? Does it get written somewhere? Or do they put it on post-its or do they
I
write on a flip
facilitate.
chart?
Yep.
Okay.
So I
So it goes
facilitate that.
somewhere, something
And then
can be
there's a,
done with it.
yes, accountability.
Brilliant.
Hello, Yoga. Yes.
Yes.
So yes, I scribe. I write a report
Mhm.
at the end as well, and then there's
Oh, wow.
accountability ongoing. You know, yeah, because you know you've talked about it as well. Behavior change does not happen overnight. I am who I am. You are who you are. That's it. But oh, Yoka's given me feedback, and I have her feelings, so I do need to do something about it because I value her. You know,
Yes.
so it takes time, and we are who we are, and yeah, it's difficult to change. Let's be honest. So
And sometimes there's so much that, so let's say, I don't know how many people have been in that group. If they're hearing a lot of feedback on what they need to change, they're not going to be able to do all of it
yes,
overnight. So it's
yes,
like chunking it, and that's always where your coaching side comes in with the work to
yes,
say, what are you going to do after the session? Like picking one thing,
yeah,
like
yeah,
starting with one thing, and then if you're going on a long journey with them, then you could always, like you said, you have that report so you could always feed that back to them in the next
yeah,
session or give it to them as a handout to say from this list, tick off what have you worked on, what is the next thing, or is there something else that has come up? So you're actually
100%.
helping them to focus on what can their goal be. So
Yeah,
I always do that with coaching clients. They do like this whole journaling process, where it's, I know you have like a journaling book that you even sell, but it's like guiding people with the questions, you see. So it's like helping them to already go on a process before they've even met with the coach.
Yeah,
And then they actually come up with they need to work on all of these things. And it's like getting that all down because in the future they might not know what they want to work on. And then you have a list or you
yeah.
could reflect back to them. This is what you said. But
And
sometimes people actually go through things and then you deal with what are they dealing with right now?
yeah,
This was our plan, but this is what you need right now. Let's work on that. That's
yeah.
what I had today. I had to deal with a specific situation with someone, and I was like, this is great. That's why you have coaching as your superpower, that you can use these dilemmas and then learn from it and reframe it and get into a better state.
Yeah,
Great identifying this
100%.
trauma for yourself.
As facilitators and coaches, we have to be super present and super alert. And a session that I just outlined about the two wonderful things that you're doing for our team and the two things that you're doing that hold our team back at the executive level, those sessions have a big cognitive load to them as well, Yoka, because we're having
Lots, lots.
important conversations. So yes, that reporting at the end is really important to have the whole list of stuff as well. Definitely so, because there's so much to take in. Um, have we missed anything, Yoka?
I just want to recommend that you maybe get a scribe that can help you in those sessions because
Yes.
while you're doing all of those things, you could get that person to note things down. When I was doing culture
Good idea.
work with the one company, we did a lot of work on they were speaking about the voice of the customer and the voice of the team, and they actually did a lot of focus groups in getting feedback that they would then be relaying back to the leaders and the teams. But as they were working, we actually had these flip chart paper that we stuck with sticky tape on the walls because it was like a huge group. And
Bet.
they were building empathy maps, putting themselves in different stakeholders' shoes. It was quite interesting because some of the groups had to do the team, as in the staff, how how do they create an amazing employee experience for the staff?
Hmm.
They had the leadership stakeholder, then they had like their clients because they were insurance, life insurance, um, disability cover. So it was actually the miners, the people's families that they had to put themselves in their shoes. So they're actually looking at from all different perspectives. So you
Hmm.
can imagine the amount of so they were writing themselves, but then all of that had to then be compiled and reports, and
Yeah.
there were about 5 different facilitators over 4 days. It was like a massive, massive project. But ultimately, then getting that all together, they had such beautiful data that they
Yes.
could use and ideas because they came up with these. They called it the magical. So it was like a magical moment, almost like a custom experience, but you could then bring it in even to staff. Like, how do you create that magical custom experience? And a lot of it didn't actually have to entail a lot of money. It was small things that they could do. So when you actually pull from the room, you can actually come up with amazing ideas to turn a team around. So actually ask them,
Yeah.
what do you need? What would really make you a transformative team? Yeah.
Exactly.
I was I was thinking of when you were talking about the toxic teams and that, I thought of those and you and your previous boss like bumping heads. I was thinking of the norming, forming,
Yeah.
storming,
Tuckman.
performing stages of a team. And
Yeah.
I've also seen in the past where I was bumping heads with a manager, we just couldn't get past storming.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need to get to that place where you need to submit under the
Yeah.
manager and realize they are the leader. You need to like suck it up. But the leader also needs to step up. And that's where I think with the executive work that you do and the even the reports, all of that is actually
Mm.
seeing what are our strengths? What is Prina better? What is Yuka better? Let Prina do that. Let Prina teach Yuka this. It's like actually seeing how is the team stronger as a whole versus the sum of its parts, and that's really where when they start owning their own strengths and looking at those psych tools, as you said,
And
where things can start changing.
And we come full circle to the first line you said. It's about team connectedness, Yoka. Boom, there. Yoka, I have one final question for you. If I was to hand you a magic wand, what is one way that you would change the way of the workplace? Yoka van Dam, tell me.
So, with a magic wand, I
Yeah.
would inject all the leaders a dose of empathy so that
Yes.
they could really feel with their teams and see what they're experiencing and really like have better relations and rapport. For teams and leaders, I would give them an extra set of ears so that they could listen better and really give them that calm and that ability to really listen very well and not just listen to the words, but also to what the person's saying, what they're not saying, those micro expressions. I know Mark Bowden says you can't read body language. I believe that. But what we learned in NLP coaching is if you go soft eyes, and when you are working with a person, then you see much more than when you are just focused and looking at someone's nose. You actually, even when you are facilitating in a room, you can actually pick up if you're losing the people, if a phrase that you're using is peeing people off or whatever. So it's
Yeah.
like really, I would give people that extra set of ears to listen, but to listen wider and to be more present.
Yeah.
So like listening to people so they can pivot and actually adapt. So I was doing a talk recently that I've now adapted as a talk that I'm selling, which is called Pitch in a Way That Michael Jordan Would Say Yes. And
What?
it was all about strategic selling, based on the Air Michael Jordan case study of the 80s. And one of the things that came from the movie that I used as a case study that worked really well was Sonny Vaccaro, who was pitching Michael Jordan, when they did the final pitch and they were in the boardroom and they designed the shoe to fit Michael Jordan's foot, and they done the reveal and they did all of these things and they did the mock-up of the magazines and all of that. Um, After doing all of that, they then played this corporate video, which didn't fly at all. And it was like of Michael Jordan um playing ball, and there was like this inspirational music, and he just saw that everyone were like looking down, you could just see like, oh, this is irritating, it's not working. So he just stopped the video.
Yeah.
He was listening to the audience, and then he went into the most inspirational speech, and I'll send you that clip. Maybe you could put it into the show notes,
Yeah,
where
cool.
he actually spoke into the core of who Michael is. And he was like, um, all of us sitting around this table will be forgotten, but you won't be forgotten. And it's not about the money or whatever, but it's actually about who's going to be there with you and who are you as a person and how are you going to get up when people kick you down, and like this beautiful motivational speech. But ultimately, he was willing to listen
Hmm.
through the micro expressions that they were doing in the room and looking away and like feeling that uneasiness, like this is not working, I need to do something about it. So I would give people that
That's cool.
ability to really listen to much deeper, and I think that would really make a huge difference.
And for our audience, Yoka, I'll put your details in the show notes. And you're being very kind and offering a discount to first few members. So tune in, definitely check out the show notes. And I love what you said about empathy, extra ears, and that tuning in a la Michael Jordan. I don't know what it's called. Is it extra sensory perception? There's something there, isn't there, where you completely read the room, you are present and you are in flow. Yoka, I cannot thank you enough for this really fascinating conversation. Until the next time.
It was excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prina. I just want to throw in there, it's
Yeah,
called gestalt. It's
perfect.
there's a gestalt type of thing that I've heard of recently, that it's actually a facilitation style where you are picking up on everything in the room, and I'll send you something about that as
Perfect.
well. Thank you so much. Very
You.
valuable.
Until the next time, Yoka. Thank you so much.